Well, here we are on Monday afternoon. Time for Hands Across the Border. To Pat McGart. How are you?
Afternoon, Jude.
You
How are
keeping
you?
well?
Very well, grand.
You're not getting running up the walls with this confinement?
Well,
Because you spend a lot of your time out on the road.
well, we try and get out, Jude, because there's talks of possible changes in all this COVID regulations again and guidelines. So the last time we were stuck indoors for the best part of 2 months, we didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
This time, this last while, we've been deliberately going out as much as we can just to enjoy ourselves.
So you feel the need to do that?
Absolutely. Like we went up the coast of Antrim there last Sunday. We were up by Leitrim and Roscommon the Sunday before. So we're just trying to get out over the weekends.
How long does it take you to get to the Glens of Antrim from where you are?
About an hour and a half, 2 hours. I like it up. I love around Carnlough and the Cushion Down. I absolutely love it. I think they're beautiful.
I used to live in Northumberland for 2 years, and there was a Donegal woman there, and she went on a day trip to the Lake District on a bus, and she came back and they asked her what did she think, and she says, kids' toys is good in Donegal any day.
You're probably right,
So local patriotism.
I always think Donegal is the one.
Oh, I agree.
It's a Cinderella county of Ireland. It's neither of the north nor of the south.
Yeah.
Kerry gets all the publicity. No, there's a famous story about John B. Keane. They were having apparently an argument in his pub one day, and somebody says to him, which was the best, Donegal or Kerry? And he says, and I'm not going to even try putting on his accent. He says, man made Kerry, but God made Donegal. So that's good enough for me.
I was probably drunk when he said it. Anyway,
right.
Let's get down to business here. We've got 3 topics to discuss. I don't know if we'll get time for them all. I have to keep my eye on the time now.
Yeah.
The first one you wanted to talk about is the fact that the Unquiet Graves film is being shown. Is it RTE on Wednesday?
Wednesday night, yeah, 9:35, I think.
And that, of course, is all about is it about the illegal killings, the Glenanne gang generally, or is it about a specific incident?
No, it's the Glenanne gang killings. Jude, what I find amazing is, and it's something that's bugged me for many, many years. The RT did a program there quite recently on Martin McGuinness, and it was quite good. Like, I'm not knocking it; it was good as in fact. But what I always find about RT and about the Dublin media, and by and large even BBC, is the total lack of context about how all these things happen. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if Martin McGuinness came out fully formed with all his political views and prejudice and all the rest. And the same with a lot of Northern Republicans and all the rest. Well, you sort of go, wait a minute, the Glenanne gang were involved. This is state collusion by both the RUC, the UDR, and British intelligence, if that's not a contradiction in terms, in Northern Ireland. And they were involved in 120 murders. Now, there was only one, the whole narrative, when you talk about the North, you read the Sunday Independent, RTE, BBC, their only one narrative is the bad guys were always Republicans, IRA and all the rest, without framing in the context. When young people were getting shot by loyalists on the street, like you weren't living in a vacuum. That was part of the whole, like there were a lot of players at play during the Troubles. But when you read the sort of one-sided history and the one-sided storytelling and the one-sided whatever else you can think on, Jude, it used to really annoy me because I was always saying, wait a minute, okay, let's slam the IRA for the bad things they have done, but it isn't in isolation. Let's also, the nationalist community was not to blame for a lot of stuff that went on. Neither were Republicans.
Yeah.
That was basically what I'm trying to say in a sort of a very short way.
Yeah. Anne Cadwallader's book, Lethal Allies, covers the Glenanne gang. And anybody interested in the subject, I'd really recommend it. I have to confess that there was parts of it when I was reading it, I was nearly in tears. Some of the really innocent people who were killed brutally,
Yeah.
So it's this, what we're talking about this now is a loyalist gangs in conspiracy with the state. Now, let me be the devil's advocate for a moment. From their point of view, it would have been logical because what are the loyalist gangs opposed to? The IRA. What are the state forces opposed to? The IRA. So my enemy's enemy is my friend.
Yeah, the
So it's
old
not
Arab one.
that surprising that the two, conspired together. Now you might say, of course, well, they're supposed to be a neutral force, the police, but we know they weren't. We knew that
Yeah.
long before the troubles broke out as well.
No. I mean, that's the other part, showing me on me prejudice here, but this thing about the honest broker, about the RUC and of the British forces, they've got away with that for a very, very long time, and that is so dishonest, and it's been bought. The thing that really gets to me is you go down south and you talk to anybody. The only thing that most of the people will ever talk to you about is about the role of the IRA in the troubles in the north, and that really gets on my wick. Now, I am quite willing to let the IRA take their share of the blame for the things they've done and the things that I don't think they can stand over. Fair enough. But let's put it in context. This was not a war fought in a vacuum. And there were a lot of other people at play during those troubles. Mm-hmm. And for, even to this day, Jude, there's a sort of a total dishonesty in the Republic's media, not the Republican media, the Republic's media about what went on. And there's this sort of West Britism. It's almost if the RUC and were the good guys. And the one final thing I have fallen out with a member of the Garda Síochána in the past because he hates but when you were a Republican and you saw the Garda Síochána working hand in glove with the RUC and you knew what they were up to, and a lot of Republicans knew what was going on, and that's where their dislike and for the role of the Gardaí came out, And so and that created then of course you're against the legitimate forces of law and order in the Republic. There's the whole circle keeps going.
Yeah. Well, I said that I had a conversation with a guy who's a unionist once, and he said the subject of collusion came up, and he said, "Well, what the hell did you expect?" He says, "Are you kidding? The IRA was the common enemy, and of course they're going to weigh in the loyalists." And the RUC are going to look and say, "Oh, here's a bunch of guys who are willing to help us in this, so we'll help them." So from their point of view, there was a terrible logic to it. That's not to say that there was. There's two difficulties about it, I think. One is that much of the loyalist campaign was built on what was actually a credible strategy, but a terrible strategy, and it was literally terrorism. That is to say, their aim was to kill as many Catholics or soft nationalists, if you want that, as possible. And that would put the fear of God into people and the nationalist side, and they would reject the IRA and say, "Stop killing, for God's sake, look at what's happening to us." So that was...
the terrorism was almost confined to republicanism, right? You can argue
I'm not saying that, Pat. I'm not saying that. No terrorism. I'm saying terrorism was literally the loyalist gangs.
No, I take your point. I understand the point you're making, Jude. But that when you get the media, the word terrorist is almost uniquely labeled to the IRA. But here, the whole thing about it, the loyalism was the real terrorism. Because if you were walking down the street and you had a Celtic jersey, it didn't matter if you've never been near an IRA thing in your life, didn't even support them. Like a young fellow, I just read Lethal Allies. I was just glancing through it before we came on. Young fellow, he was shot dead by the loyalists because he was walking down the street because of Celtic jersey on. Absolutely no connection whatsoever with republicanism.
Yeah, but you see, I'm not saying I approve of this, but that's what terrorism does. You say we will strike terror into the population, and in this case, the idea would be to strike terror into the heart of the Catholic population, for want of a better word. So that they would say, they would withdraw support from the IRA, and therefore the game would be won. In other words, the pool in which the IRA swam would be dried up because people would be too frightened to have anything to do with them. Now, I think it's that aspect of it that upsets me a bit. It's a logical strategy, and it makes sense and sometimes works in a war, but it's sort of horrible, as you say, a young guy walking along, wearing his Celtic jersey, or not even, and he gets killed because he's a Catholic. That's a terrible shocking.
But the whole thing is, it's all about propaganda. It's all about winning hearts and minds. And the whole thing about it is the truth. What they say in a war, the truth is the first casualty. I'm not here to justify anything there. No. It's what really gets on my wick is the fact that when you talk to people, there's almost this denial that there was so much else at play. And like the state forces and were involved between, I think, 1972 and 1978, 120 murders. That's some record, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's the thing that I would hold them most at fault for. In a way, as I say, there is a terrible logic to that, terrorism against innocent Catholics. But what I would fault them for is that the real crime is they've refused to admit, the state forces have refused to admit that happened. And it's all just a few bad apple stuff.
And even to this day,
that seems to be wrong. That's lying.
Jude, and even to this day, unionist politicians are saying that the nationalists and the Republicans are overplaying collusion. How can you overplay 120 murders by state forces?
Well, those are the verified ones, There are others.
There's all sorts of other tips, for loyalists, and like even Pat Finucane, like the way, and I was, suddenly the British Army patrols in the streets come off the streets in West Belfast. They have the loyalists have a clear run in and a clear run out. And Belfast on a Sunday afternoon, give us a break.
Yeah. It's that refusal to acknowledge it. I mean, they could argue it. I think if they would acknowledge it, then they could argue that, well, in these circumstances, this is why we did this. And then people can make up their mind whether that was a good thing or a bad thing or acceptable in a war situation or not. But there's a hypocrisy there in the refusal to acknowledge it.
That's a hypocrisy. I think it gets to most people.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, as you say, is they don't provide a broader context even beyond that. That they had 50 years of misrule, which was really bloody ridiculous when you think about it. Okay, I think we've hammered that one in particular. What time is that on that Unquiet Grave?
I think it's 9:35 Wednesday night.
Maybe worth watching. Okay, Fianna Fáil. Fianna Fáil, the latest Red Sea poll is bringing the blues to Micheál Martin. He was, I forget what he was before this, but
they're down 5. They're down. There were 15. They're now down to 10%. I think they're lowest ever.
And let's give it the context of the other parties now. Sinn Féin's at
27, and Fine Gael is 35.
Right. So so Fianna Fáil have come down from 15 to 10, which is terribly, terribly low.
15 was very low for them anyway.
How much have Sinn Féin and how much have Fine Gael shifted, I wonder?
Well, Fine Gael have gone up. I think they're basically staying where they were, and Sinn Féin are staying where they were. But Fianna Fáil have dropped 5%. Now, here, when you think about it, they're in government and they've got the Taoiseach, and it's you sort of think, what is the old term? This should get a bounce in the polls and all this sort of stuff, but it ain't working for them. It's been just one disaster after another.
It's the other way around.
We've been down this territory before, Jude, in the recent days, but it just doesn't seem to be working. And the other thing now, the latest one, even some people in Micheál Martin's own party are saying his reaction to Boris Johnson, in regard to the withdrawal bill, as our Taoiseach, it's been so weak, and so now it took him about 5 days to get around to actually making a statement of any kind, and then now he's starting to get a spine a wee bit this last couple of days, but it's a wee bit late in the day now. Everybody else has been out of the traps before him, including 2 former British Prime Ministers, and isn't it unbelievable? The 2 British Prime Ministers have been stronger about this than our Taoiseach.
Well, there's at least 2. I think it's 3 now, actually. David Cameron came out today. Cameron came out today and said he was opposed to 2. I suppose it's the pain of office. Like you said, a bounce. Actually, I wouldn't have predicted much of a bounce for anybody going in as Taoiseach in the present circumstances. With Brexit and with COVID, I mean, you're going into an appalling bog, which is going to suck you down, except you're very nimble.
But no, hold on, Dr. Collins. It's not doing either Sinn Féin or Fine Gael much harm.
No, but Sinn Féin isn't in power.
No, but
Fine Gael is a funny one now. That really is strange to me. But I can see how Fianna Fáil would go down because they've had just one disaster after another. On the one hand, as you say, Micheál didn't talk, as far as we can gather, quickly or strongly enough to Johnson about his plans for the withdrawal bill. Yeah. In addition to that, his TDs are complaining that he's in there lecturing them and talking down to them, which they really don't like very much. So externally and internally, he's saying the wrong things. Then there's the whole thing about losing three, he's on his third agricultural minister after a very short time. But this is the problematic one for me. Pat, you tell me. Fine Gael are on 35%.
Yeah.
Think of the biggest scandal recently, Golfgate.
Yeah.
Who was the biggest figure there?
Yeah,
Phil
Hogan. But Jude, Dr. Collins, here you go again. He is not a domestic politician. He has been out of the frame for 3-4 years. He's been in Europe. So he was it was guilt by association. Now that's totally wrong. You know what I mean? He was not performing on the national stage. He was out of the picture for quite a while. So they didn't suffer a lot. Now had it been a serving minister, I think they would have paid a big price for it. But they shunted him off to after the water fiasco, the water charges fiasco. They shunted. He was the minister for the environment. Then they shunted him off to Europe because they knew he'd never get elected again down in wherever it is.
Well, I think what you say is logical, all right, Paddy. He isn't a player on the national stage or the Free State stage, but he. If you ask the average punter, you're talking as a logical thinker, and you're also talking as a man who's informed in these things. Take the average man in the street, a woman in the street, and you say to them, what was that golf kid about? Oh, that Phil Hogan guy. That's what they would say. Now, everybody knows that Phil Hogan is Fine Gael. So why didn't that, at least to some extent, impact on the numbers or the percentage for Fine Gael? You know, they have stated you see, is a whopping total, you know.
Well, here we are again. You see, Fianna Fáil's the ones and power. Micheál Martin couldn't catch a cold right now. That's how bad things are for him. He had Leo Varadkar been in charge, and it all happened during on. But here we have Micheál Martin. He's got Golfgate. He's lost two ministers and all that. So the sort of the tide is swimming away from him all the time, and he just keeps losing things. So I think he just got caught up in it. Leo has been a lucky general in the sense that he's out of power right now. The Taoiseach is the one who's getting that.
Is he out of power?
He is. Well, he's out of power in the sense of the Taoiseach is.
He's not the Taoiseach. He's not the Taoiseach, but his party is part of it. His party
but at the end of the day, the main person is the Taoiseach. He's the one allegedly making the rules and calling the shots. That's Micheál Martin.
But I accept that he is the figurehead, the first one you go to. But at the same time, there's no doubt about it that Fine Gael are in power. You could argue it the same way almost as Arlene and Michelle O'Neill up in the north. They're both sharing power. One is obviously the lead party at the moment, and the other one's slightly subsidiary. But all I'm saying is, Fianna Fáil really suffered in this poll, and Fine Gael seemed to be, floating in the waves quite happily.
But you see, Fianna Fáil, with respect, to have a bit of a track record here. The Galway tent, and the complete, don't do as I do as I say type thing. And so it just smacked of here. Fianna Fáil are back in power, and we're back to the same old ways.
It might be that they after the trouble stopped, that they unwrapped the second part. Fianna Fáil unwrapped the second part of their title and said, Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party. Now, to try to out-Republican Sinn Féin is not a good idea. You can't get greener than Sinn Féin. So
not
you're
really.
sort of wasting your time trying to. And then, of course, in a way, I come back to this. So much of our politics is decided by how people look, about their body language, the expression. I watched Micheál yesterday on Sunday Politics with Anya Lawler.
Yeah,
it was an interview for about 15 minutes, and it was like a little mouse. It was like a mouse, that was nervous and was afraid that somebody's going to put their foot on them. And she gave him a brisk enough interview, but it wasn't that bad. But Micheál, he was moving his hands too much. He was gabbling little quick phrases, and it contrasts so badly with Leo. But on the other hand, I still say, I am surprised that Fine Gael got off scot-free, despite the fact that, at least on the count of Phil Hogan, they were guilty. And it's one thing to say he's not part of the national scene, but he is a Fine Gael man to his roots. And he's furious that with Leo for dropping him into.
No, I think it's just the tide was running against Leo and or Michal, and this was just another. There already had been a couple of mess ups, and here was just another one. And
well, I don't think he's going to survive.
I really don't think he is either.
If this keeps up, he'll not survive for very long.
Hey Jude, there's a famous wee character in The Simpsons called Mr. Smothers, and if you ever want to see Mr. Smothers, look up Michal Martin. You think, did the guy ever meet Michal Martin?
Okay. Your last topic for conversation, Pat, was these online nutters. Tell us about you keep running into them, do you?
Jude, usually on a Sunday evening, I'm sitting here and I go on to Facebook for a while. If you're bored, I've stopped nearly going on Facebook, other than maybe the number of Looney Tunes out there about COVID-19, about how masks are. The globalists are out there to try and take over the world. They're out there to try and get us under control. And this is the last thing this is a plandemic, not a pandemic. That pedophiles are running the world, and that Donald Trump is fighting him from the bunker of the White House, and he's the good guy. And it's all coming from this sort of I don't know what the hell it is. Apparently, it starts this QAnon thing, a pro-Trump conspiracy theorist who nobody knows who the person is, and it's getting believed. Now, the number of medical people across the globe. Now, there's some dispute how effective masks are, but there's no doubt that they lessen the chances of spreading disease, and it's been proven numerous times. But this stuff is growing and growing. Now, my dear wife says she's seriously considering giving up Facebook. My son has already given up, and I am definitely going to think, because the stuff Jude out there is it's absolutely insane. It's almost as if the lunatics have taken over the asylum.
I think that might to some extent have to do with the form in which the communication is coming. I think social media, online stuff encourages people to take really extreme positions because they feel anonymous. They'll say things they would never say to a person to their face or to a group of people live. So in part, it's that cover that the social media gives them, I think. The other thing is, these are scary times from all points of view. Brexit, COVID,
Donald Trump,
all the bad stuff. So it's comforting to take find a bogeyman or a conspiracy to blame it all on. Kind of a scapegoat, and that gives relief to simple minds. But I'll tell you something. You were saying your wife had stopped is thinking about quitting Facebook. I can understand that completely. I'm not saying Facebook are the same thing, but I've stopped listening to the Stephen Nolan show because, to be honest with you, it just was sort of repetitive and saying the same kind of things. And my wife was telling me today that he was on and he was busy bashing Sinn Féin, and he had
what is it, Bobby Story's funeral on for about 14 days in a row.
We're running with that. So I have that kind of argumentative bash them up radio. I find it less appealing. And as I say, I used to listen to it faithfully, but I got fed up with it. The other thing is, I don't do. You see, you must go and look for these people, or they must be drawn to you, Pat, because I don't see too many of them, as many as you do. And the best answer to those people, I think, and it's hard to do, but it is the best answer.
Don't engage.
Don't answer, because it's like, you remember Spider Kelly?
Yeah.
You remember Spider Kelly?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
His famous was he ducked and he weaved. So that the guy was punching thin air. He couldn't throw a punch himself, mind you, but he was very good at avoiding other punches. There's nothing more exhausting than punching thin air. With these nutters, let them rave, and if they don't have people coming back at them, I think eventually they're going to run out of steam. That's
Jude, I agree with that, except in America, these people have elected Trump, and there's a certain clown in Downing Street who got an 83 seat majority based on basically deceit and a lot of it social media stuff that people have bought into. That's what I find. The days, I really hope somewhere along the way, and I know you're watching the clock here, that there's a return to authentic media. no media that people can trust. In other words, go back out and buy a newspaper where the journalists have to. Jude, when I was at the Daily Journal, if we got something wrong in the paper and somebody rang up and said that fact is that to us was absolutely anathema. Our credibility was out the window that we got something wrong. Mm-hmm. See now, anybody can put anything up on Facebook and label somebody, and not a thing, and just not a bother.
But I suppose you see, in a way, I hate to be making excuses for these people, but it's kind of like conversation, except it's online. In conversation, we say all sorts of things. You know, we can't really stand over or we'll slag off somebody. But these guys simply transfer that onto online. So it's not really, it's not, in a way, it's not fair to compare social media with a respectable newspaper. You know, because it's a different...
but Jude, it's replaced or taken the place of, and many instances. Most people now do not get their news from a newspaper. They get it from online, from social media. And a lot of them are buying conspiracy theories. And that's why the Russians allegedly are trying to interfere and pro-Trump. And that's why all the big parties have got their social media departments to get their messages out there. Yeah. And where's the checks and balances on that?
Well, what you need is, I don't think you can do anything. Well, maybe you can do something about that state of affairs. But what could happen would be that instead of going and buying the newspapers, you say, if more newspapers were online and were providing quality journalism, I think you'd be keener. I mean, I'll give you a quick example. I could buy the Irish News, but I don't think it's good enough to pay money for.
No. Well,
especially since it lost its best columnist.
I say, On that note, Dr. Collins.
Okay,
all the best, Jude.
Okay,
Good luck.